Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, gang? Welcome to big game day edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. The original 6 Boston Bruins in town tonight to take on your Winnipeg Jets. We'll be all over it. Mike McIntyre is going to join us coming up first off, and we'll get the latest on the Bruins with our old pal Joe Haggerty with lots of information on the very weird season right now that's already cost Jim Montgomery his job, but sees the Bruins coming in under interim head coach Joe Sacco playing well and winners of 4 in a row. We'll also hit some of the top stories around the National Hockey League with our pal Chris Meaney. Of course, Meaney's been on with us a number of times in his former home at FTN. He is now the fantasy and betting expert for NHL.com. So really looking forward to getting Meaney on the program. So tons of hockey talk today. First off, shout out to Remis and Connor Rabchak. Thanks so much, guys, for taking care of the show yesterday while we traveled back from Minneapolis. Had an amazing time on the weekend down in the Twin Cities. Saw one of the most fun games I've been to. And listen, being a Chiefs guy, it wasn't life or death whether the home team won, but it certainly was a lot of fun seeing Sammy Darts throw for 5 touchdowns and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison go off and Kirk Cousins continue his miserable stretch over the past month. And it's hilarious. It doesn't matter where we go. There's some Winnipeggers there that are listeners and viewers of Winnipeg Sports Talk that are saying hi. Shout out to everyone that said hi at the game and in and around the Twin Cities on the weekend. Just before we get Remis in here and get the latest on the Jets and the lineup for tonight, a bunch of lineup changes, many more than we normally see. A huge thanks to the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. Don't forget that Hockey Canada Ultimate 50-50 is on right now. First draw is on December 26th to start off the World Juniors. All the money stays in Manitoba. Check the link in the description for that or go to hockeymanitoba.ca. Also want to thank Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada. By the way, speaking of Coolbet, a week today, our December event in the Lock Shop WST EST Poker Series is going to happen, and that will be a fun one because that's also a late-night game for the Winnipeg Jets against the San Jose Sharks. So we'll start the poker at 9 p.m. The game will start at 9:30. Kind of a fun poker and hockey night if you're staying home. Join us on that. Also want to thank Rolly's Transfer, Manitoba Battery, fansfirst.ca, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza. We'll get to a why not question of the day for not Autocorp, but Waverly and McGillivray. And, of course, thanks to the Winnipeg Jets. Lots going on heading into the holidays for the Winnipeg Jets. And our next game is going to be a week Saturday, December 21st. The WST Holiday Spectacular at Canada Life Center. If you haven't already, grab your tickets. Join us and the rest of the WST gang up in Section 316 for a Saturday night tilt against the hated Minnesota Wild. Go to winnipegjets.com/WST to grab your tickets, and we will look forward to seeing you with bells on heading into the holiday week. Let's get to it. Welcome to everybody in chat. Great to see you all. And welcome to you, Michael Remis. Great stuff yesterday with Connor, man. I checked it out a little bit on the road as I was coming back from the Twin Cities and then dealing with having to drive about 65 clicks an hour on ice-covered highways from about halfway in between Grand Forks and the border and our lovely home of the Peg.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun chopping it up with Connor. Some great takes on the Jets. We did have some news yesterday with the Chibrikov call-up, speculated on where he would play. Our questions were definitely answered, Husser, on the lines. And, hey, you mentioned our gathering at holiday game against the Wild, December 21. Listen to this. We got an email from the Marble winner from on Friday, Justin. He says he's a big-time WST listener, goes back to the radio days, but that game, him and a bunch of friends dress up as Santas. It's their annual Santa game, so he was inviting anyone who's a WST listener coming to dress up as Santa. They're in section 320. So this holiday game against the Wild Huss, I'm starting to get very excited. As big rivalry game. Minnesota's in first place. We'll have everyone there, and yes, a number of Santas taking in the game with us as well.
Okay, that's going to be awesome. Justin, you and the gang. And listen, if you are coming, you already have your seats. 320 is not too far away from 316. We'll be in the hangar bar there right at 316 before the game, during period. So definitely come by with it. I'm glad you adjusted your hat. I had a hard time keeping a straight face.
What do you mean? Like this?
This
is how they wear it.
Here's a bonus question, folks. Just is it just me, or is that one of the more ridiculous ways of wearing wearing a hat? I was gonna ask the chat before you adjusted it. What hat do we think Michael Remis is wearing today? Because there's no way of knowing when you have it at a right angle on the top of your head with the bill.
I don't want to put it all the way down. My hair is a little wet.
Podcast listeners, this is what you're missing if you're not able to join us live on YouTube every day. Reem, let's get to tonight's game, and I have to say, and listen, I know you guys talked about it yesterday. And the team doesn't want to hear anything about it or doesn't want to throw it out there. Some people will. Some people don't have time for it. The Winnipeg Jets just finished the most hellacious schedule stretch I can remember since the team came back in 2011. There have been some 7 or 8 game road trips. I don't think there has ever been, and it would be interesting to check out with Elias stats or whatever, a team that had to play 15 consecutive games in different cities. And listen, we spoke about it on the show going back on the road after the ugly game last Tuesday against the Blues, that, they were playing another 3-4, and you had some quote unquote winnable games in Buffalo and Chicago and then Columbus coming in. But it was still going to really be a test. And listen, credit on them for finding a way to win in Buffalo in overtime, for getting the win in Chicago. I was really nervous about that Columbus game, and I think we saw, kind of a badminton in the third period turn a 1-1 game into a regulation home loss to a team that you probably feel like you should have beaten. But to me, this game tonight kind of really is the start of the homestand, because, playing on a Sunday afternoon after you just played Saturday afternoon in Chicago, with the fact that, we're talking about 15 games. That is more than half of the schedule so far. Now, that won't be happening again. And listen, the Jets are in a great spot in the standings, but it's time to get home, to get on a roll on home ice, and to make up some of the ground that they've lost, going, 4-6 in their last 10. And listen, it's a great matchup tonight with the Boston Bruins team that's playing a heck of a lot better lately. And then a huge game on Thursday with Vegas. The Habs in on Saturday. It's been about over a month since the team has had any extended time at home, and you know what? It's time to get after it tonight against a good team, and some big changes in the lineup tonight. Obviously, Connor Hellebuck in the place of Eric Comrie, who played on Sunday, but 3 changes. I don't know if we've had 3 changes in the lineup for any game at point this season. Ville Heinola is in for Colin Miller. David Gustafsson is in for Rasmus Kupari, and Nikita Chibrikov makes his season debut. He will go right into the top 6, playing on the wing as Vladimir Metznikov moves in the middle with Cole Perfetti on the side. So an interesting and pretty busy morning coming out of the Jets morning skate.
Yeah, Connor and I talked a lot about the schedule and fatigue, and we can all say, yeah, it's the NHL. Everyone's dealing with it, but I think you can acknowledge that it's pretty obvious the team doesn't look like they have the same jump as they do. And is it a factor that they hadn't played a game in the same city, a game without traveling to another city in a month? I think it might be. We talked yesterday, going back to December 9, that game against the Stars. That was the last time they played back-to-back games anywhere in one city. So, they're home for a week. We can put the excuses in the box. Time to play, time to be prepared, and a bit of a different look with the lines, as you said. Brad Lambert sent down, Chibrikov called up, and he's on line 2 with Nemestikov and Perfetti. I think it made sense. Nemestikov put him back at center. He's been the center all year. And I guess Gustafsson gets a turn in, and Billy Heinola is back in with Logan Stanley, Hellebuck starting. So a different look tonight, and I agree, Hustle. He hasn't been, I think they're pretty minor, like sixth defenseman, the call up forward, the goalie change, but haven't had a lot of changes. So I think this would qualify as a game with maybe the most from back to back.
Now, I see Julian Labasi says Chibi should be getting a team around him in better condition. You would hope so. I mean, listen, they needed to do a lot of R&R yesterday. We've said that anytime they haven't had a game, with how many games they played and how much travel they've been doing. But all of that is in the rearview mirror right now. And, listen, a lot of what they did earlier in the season has been eroded away. They're no longer first place. You got the Minnesota Wild right there. You got the Dallas Stars behind with a couple games in hand. You got the Colorado Avalanche. You made a big move yesterday in net, getting Mackenzie Blackwood from the San Jose Sharks that are playing better, although just 3 games over 500 right now. So, you'd like to continue holding your spot or making a little bit of move on Minnesota, who is in Utah tonight. I talked about that in the lock shop. Just a very short favorite tonight. Kind of surprising considering their 11-2-3 record on the road so far this year. But for Winnipeg, it is time to play with as much energy as possible. And listen, you're going to need it against a Boston Bruins team that, as we'll talk with Joe Haggerty a little later on, Remis, seems to be on a much better track than they were 3 weeks ago or so when Jim Montgomery was getting blown out and Joe Sacco was taking over as the interim head coach.
Yeah, there were some concerns for Bruins, but look now in the last 10, 7-3-0. They come into this game on a 4-game win streak. I think to start the year, Jeremy Swayman, he had the contract negotiations and wasn't playing well, but they seem to be finding their form. And you think, firing a guy like Jim Montgomery, who's been coach of the year before, got scooped up immediately by the Blues, who had to fire a guy after a very short tenure in Drew Bannister to get him. But this seems to be a move that has sparked the team. And, maybe some concern, hey, you don't exactly have, Pavel Zacha. He's not going to replace Patrice Bergeron. But there they are, third in the Atlantic, 15-11-3. On pace, Huss, for their annual playoff series against the Maple Leafs. So we'll see what happens with the Bruins. Man, this playoff format is just terrible. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm sure it'll be a lively crowd tonight, as Original Six teams always bring a number of fans of the other team here at Canada Life Center.
Yeah, exactly. You got the old, and listen, the Bruins, around 2011 when the Jets came back in, had their cup win, and, I think there was kind of that funnel of fans kind of got restocked a little bit with their success. And the bottom line, they've been an awesome team for a long time, although they're very different. I mean, in the post-Bergeron and Krejci era, they don't have any of the center depth that they've had before. Pasta had a very slow start to the season. Brad Marchand had a very slow start to the season. And of course, Jeremy Swayman, after holding out and, waiting to get his 8-year deal at, $8.25 per season, has had a very mid start to the season. He's got a save percentage under 9. And Korpisalo, by all the numbers, has actually been better than him. Now, it's coming around. But as we'll talk with Joe, I mean, this isn't a guy that's played a 60-game season. He'd been in a straight-up platoon with Linus Ullmark for the last couple seasons, so I think there is a little bit more pressure on him. And, of course, we do expect to see, 2 of the 3 USA goalies for the Four Nations going head-to-head tonight in Connor Hellebuck and in Jeremy Swayman. Mike's going to join us a little bit, but let's hear from Scott Arniel, who spoke this morning. And first things first, Brad Lambert back to the Moose and Nikita Chibrikov getting the call. Here's what Arnie had to say about Chibrikov, who will make his season debut tonight.
We talked about coming out of training camp, and although we felt both that Chibi and Lambo had good training camps and that we had an opportunity, there's something happened with our top 6 that we want to get a chance to look at them. And with the Ehlers being out, this is a little bit by design. I really liked what Lambo did for us, but we want to see Chibi too. And you're right though on the Vladdy stuff, that Vladdy's played real well for us in that hole, and he's the one that's sort of recognized that, and we've talked about it, and he moved over to the wing now to get him back in the middle. It's good timing for it, and see what Chibi can do for these next few games.
Yeah, and listen, I'm excited to see Chibrikov get a chance. I mean, I wasn't disappointed with Brad Lambert's play. We'll hear from what the coach thought about Lambo in just a minute. But I am happy that he's going to get a chance to jump into that top six. Now, listen, if he becomes an NHL regular, I'm not sure Nikita Chibrikov is a guy that will play regularly in the top six. I think he's sort of more a middle forward. But in this situation, when you can count on it, I mean, listen, the Adam Lowry line is probably going to be more so the second line tonight. We've seen the fourth line play very well together, although, a switch tonight with Coop coming out and the Gus bus rolling in. But you know what? Give Chibrikov a chance to play in a similar spot that he'd been playing with the Manitoba Moose, with the Metsnikov and Perfetti, and maybe you'll get a little bit more from that group. And obviously, you're going to rely on the Scheifele line, the Lowry line, and the fourth line to keep going. I had thought that maybe we'd see like an Alex Iafallo move up to the second line and maybe Chibrikov go in on the fourth line. But I'm here for it. I mean, I think if you're going to have these young guys play, let's see what they have. Let's see what sort of impact they can make in a spot that's really needed right now. And certainly that is the second line with Nikolai Ehlers still out. But good news is, looks like he may potentially be back on the ice in the next few days while the team's at home.
Yeah, he did skate, and Scott Arniel didn't really give any updates. He's like, yeah, it's the first day. We'll see going forward. So that was definitely positive news. And yeah, Chibrikov give an opportunity to succeed, put him with some solid players in Nemestikov, Perfetti. You're putting Nemestikov back at the position that he's been playing all year. And for Brad Lambert, he took a turn. He played 4 games. It wasn't like he was lighting the lamp, recorded 0 points. So give someone else a turn. Chibrikov, they played a couple games on the weekend and have him stay here. The team went to Calgary yesterday, and now he'll play. And they haven't really wanted to break up a lot of their lines this year. Neto, Lowry, Appleton, that line's solid. They haven't wanted to break up the top line very much as well. And the fourth line they've been together too, with Barron and Iafallo on the wings and mostly Kupari, but today it'll be David Gustafsson. So we'll see how it goes with Chibrikov getting an opportunity to have some success. And I kind of agree that we've called the Lowry line the third line, but it might really be the second line.
It's a little different when Nikolai Ehlers is in. I mean, yes. I think the impetus to get them out is a lot more when Nick is there. So we'll see how the ice time lays out, but Chibrikov is in, and listen, he's going to be playing with Nemestikov and Perfetti, so we'll certainly get a chance to show what he can do. Here's what Scott Arniel had to say about Brad Lambert's stint up with the big club.
I think huge gains even from training camp to this last little stretch. It's the hardest thing to do, especially for a centerman, is you have to play on the right side of people, and especially in your end of the rink, even on track and coming back to the neutral zone. And those are areas that he really, we talked about it before he played his first game and showed him some video about what, some other guys on our team, how they kind of defend. And he was great. He bought into a lot of that stuff, and we have some great stuff. We got some, we had some video from the last 2 games to show him. And, I think he's a better player now than he was in September. And the biggest thing is that we don't want this to be a in and out splash player that just struggles, comes up and struggles, and there's a process here. We want him to be a long NHL player, and the process so far is he got a chance to do it in sort of early December to get this look and to play against real good players from other teams, and that's part of his growth.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel. I'm sure Brad was kicking himself for not being able to finish on that play. I guess it was in the Chicago game where he had that wide open net and just put it wide. But listen, I think we've seen that he's a really talented young player with world-class speed, and wouldn't surprise me if before the end of the season we're seeing more Brad Lambert in the lineup on a regular basis. Here's what Arnie had to say about what Chibrikov brings to the team and the line with Nemestikov and Cole Perfetti.
Yeah, Chibi's he's a little ball there that goes after the puck, and he's got a bite to him, and he goes inside, and I'm sure he's going to disrupt some people tonight. But I love the fact he shoots the puck too. He loves to shoot the puck and gets himself in a position for that. So again, it'll be a little bit of that stuff without the puck that you have to be aware of. And I think Fetz and Vladdy, they have good chemistry, and they throw him in there. Just kind of like Lambeau when they went there. They thought there was good stuff happening, and so hopefully they can show some stuff tonight, and that's a weapon for us, another line for us to create offense.
Yeah, I know. He's definitely a different player than Brad Lambert, and he was a lot of fun to watch in Game 82 last year. Is always a guy you keep your eyes on when you're watching the Manitoba Moose. So he'll get a chance. I guess he's what is he, number 90, Reem?
Correct, yes. We had Perfetti, 91, Lambert, 93, Chibrikov. Now, we need some 90 jerseys here.
That's right. Maybe the team will acquire a 92 at some point as well. Here's what Arnie had to say just, about kind of moving Lambeau back to the Moose, Chibrikov up, sort of the rotation between the two, and why they kind of feel that that's the best place for both of these young players right now as they develop.
Yeah, I think that... we had talked about, like I just mentioned, about I've seen a lot. I've been in a lot of, whether teams I've been with or other teams where, you decide, okay, this guy has to play and he's not ready. And we just feel that sometimes the young guys that when you can put them in those situations, let them grow from those experiences, teach them from those experiences after they do it, they're just going to be better the next time. And it's like when I talked to Lambeau the other day, I told him, I don't know if this is going to be 1st of January I see again, whether it's in March. I don't know when that is going to be. We'll see. But everything is a growing process for him. And like I said, I want him to be an NHL player for a long time. And we're not going to rush things along where these young guys get put into situations where it backfires and now their confidence drops. They don't go out and do what they do best.
There's Coach Arniel kind of talking Chibrikov and Lambert. One other player we haven't seen a lot of this year is David Gustafsson. He's in tonight. Here's Arnie on getting Gus in the place of Rasmus Kupari this evening.
Yeah, we had talked about. I thought Coop played well in Chicago, and it wasn't that he played bad the other night. He's a right-handed center that kind of we've needed for those face-offs, and but I can't leave Gus. I can't leave him. And I'd love to do it in a scenario where it's. Maybe every 3 or 4 games, whatever. But I've liked a lot of what our fourth line has done. But I still want Gus to be a part of the group and want to get him into these games. And he's again another guy who can help us on face-off, help us on the PK.
All right, so the Gus bus, fire it up. Ken Wiebe will be fired up. But let's hear from Nikita Chibrikov. This, of course, is not his NHL debut. He played and scored in Game 82 last year, and he was asked if it helped sort of having your NHL debut behind you already at the end of last season to get ready to try to come in and make an impact tonight.
Yeah, it helps a lot. Like when you made a debut, it's like one of the first steps to become an NHL player. So yeah, a little bit more confidence, but it's new season, so it's a regular season going, so it's not the last game, so it's a little bit more like pressure here. So ready for this game and try to do all my best to help the team to win this game.
Did you talk to Brad at all before today about what his experiences was? Did he have any tips for you?
No, just before his call-up, talk a lot with him and Moose, played together in power play and one line, so push each other on the practice, so not much talk during his call-up, so yeah.
I'm blown away by just how good his English is. It has really come around in these couple of years that he's been in Manitoba. Here's just one more from Chibrikov before we bring in Mike. Here he is on getting the crack on this line with Cole Perfetti and Nemetsnikov, and of course just getting the call to be back up in the NHL.
Yeah, great guys. So Vlad also knows Russian language, so it's a little bit easier for me. So Fats is a really smart player, so I think it will easy to find the chemistry with them, so just play the right way, yeah.
Were you surprised when you got the call that you were going to be airlifted to play this game today?
I have a call from Mark Morrison, so he said me that I am call up. So I was really happy, excited to be here.
All right, so there's Nikita Chibrikov. He's fired up. He will be in the lineup tonight as the Jets host the Boston Bruins. Listen, Mike's going to join us in just a couple minutes. Folks, do not forget, right now, it is open to purchase tickets for Canada's ultimate 50-50 draw, the biggest power play yet, presented by Hockey Canada to help support grassroots hockey in Manitoba. This is a massive fundraiser, and every year, we see the World Juniors and we see these insane numbers for 50-50s, and people want to get in on it. Well, what Hockey Canada has done is a nationwide draw of a series of draws, I guess, per province. So all the tickets you buy, you will be in a pool for a 50-50 with other Manitobans. And the best part about it is 50% goes to the winner. The other 50% goes to growing the game here in Manitoba and helping Hockey Manitoba with their grassroots hockey program. So certainly for a great cause, and should be a lot of fun. There's 3 draws. The first one is on the 26th. The second one is on the 31st. And the third one is for the final on January 5th, 2025 for the World Junior Hockey Championships. There's a link in the description. If you're with us on YouTube, just click on that. If you're listening to the podcast, you can go to hockeymanitoba.ca for the link, or just put in hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com. Get your tickets, and good luck. Hopefully you can win big while supporting grassroots hockey in Manitoba for the ultimate 50-50 draw for the World Juniors. First draw is on the 26th of December. Big happy holidays to our friends at Rolly's Transfer. And of course, gang, if 2025 has a move coming up for you and your family, get in touch with our great sponsors at Rolly's and get the white glove treatment on your next move. Rolly's, family owned and operated in Manitoba for over 60 years, and the most trusted name in moving services in Manitoba, has you covered. And listen, with their extensive logistics business taking them around the province on a daily basis, you're going to be guaranteed flexible routes, flexible timing, and great rates on that move, and the service that Rolly's is famous for. Head on over to their website at rollys.com. Click on the Request an Estimate tab up at the top right. First off, put in this promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies for WST listeners, and then let them know when and where you're planning on moving and what needs to get moved. And the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly with a great quote for you to take as much of the stress out of the plan of the move and to get you locked and loaded for the big moving day. For your next move, make it Rolly's, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rollys.com. Well, I had to deal with some of the wintry weather on the weekend. We finally got the big dump. Well, this Christmas, folks, give the gift that matters with the help of Manitoba Battery. Don't yet let your loved ones be stranded in the cold this winter with a vehicle that won't start. Make sure they're equipped to handle what's ever thrown at them with something like a NOCO 1000 amp booster pack for only $139.50. Or how about a set of 25-foot booster cables for just $65? Or guys, maybe you want to treat yourself to a great deal and grab that ice fishing flasher battery you need, or that sled battery that needs to be replaced. All for the best prices in the city, beating the pants off the big box stores. Whether it's to you or your loved ones, let Manitoba Battery help you give a gift that matters this Christmas. Learn more at manitobabattery.com, now with 2 locations to serve you. And coming off their massive Black Friday sale, we now move on to Christmas at F Apparel. And free money for your Christmas gift? How about yes, please? What a great deal they've got heading into Christmas. When you purchase a gift card of $100 or more, an additional 15% will be added to the card value. So if there's a man in your life that was thinking about a new suit, maybe some new custom shirts, a dress shirt, F Apparel is the best place in town for all of that, with the best service and the best selection and custom suits starting at just $400. So give the gift of looking good this Christmas and get on over to F Apparel right now. Any gift card purchases over $100 will get a $15 bonus added to the card value. You can check and shop online at fapparel.com. That's EPH Apparel, or pop down and see him at 190 Smith Street downtown. All right, back to tonight's game, Jets Bruins, and let's welcome in Mike McIntyre on the road from the Winnipeg Free Press. So you're not in the ditch or anything, are you, Mike?
No, I was stuck behind a snowplow, though, which is why I'd hoped to get home from the rink to do this, but traffic was moving a little slowly. Folks have forgotten how to drive in this winter weather, but yeah, it's I'm just pulled over to the side here, and I'm hoping that nobody slides into my vehicle while we're talking here, Huss. That would be a little
fingers
action.
crossed. Fingers crossed. Although that would make for quite a clip on the program, but safety first here.
I would also have a slam dunk MPI claim, since it would literally be caught on video. You would potentially have to be subpoenaed as a witness, but
yeah, me and everybody else watching the show right now. By the way, shout out to everyone with us live on chat. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give a thumbs up for the show. Mike, I was saying to Remo earlier, this to me sort of feels like the start of the homestand.
yes,
Like the game on Sunday was just part of another 3 and 4 in 3 different cities. And listen, I don't want to belabor what the team's been through, but they've kind of hit the finish line of what was going to be probably the most hellacious stretch of 15 games that the Winnipeg Jets had seen since coming back into the NHL. Now it's time to get things going at home. And what a matchup to do it against. Always a lot of good energy in the crowd when the Boston Bruins come to town.
I would agree on Sunday. I mean, the Jets didn't want to use it as an excuse, and I applaud them for that. But the schedule is what it was, and that was their 10th game in 17 days. That honestly, Huss must have just felt like one big continuous road trip because they just kept having these quick 1-game stops at home, and Sunday would have initially felt like a 1-game stop. But yeah, after a day off yesterday, everybody could unpack their suitcase, get caught up on laundry, do a little shoveling, get reacquainted with loved ones. The Jets, there will be no excuse. I mean, they need to be better. And in fact, you could look at the last 2 home games, Huss, last Tuesday against St. Louis and then Sunday against Columbus. Those were stinkers. And you can blame the schedule or whatever. The Jets didn't have it really in either game. They need to be a lot better tonight. I expect they will be a lot better tonight, but they're facing, a better opponent. No disrespect to the St. Louis Blues or the Columbus Blue Jackets, who beat the Jets 4-1 in the last 2 home games here. The Bruins are a bit of a different beast. 4 wins in a row, 7-2 under their new coach. And any team that has the likes of Pasternak and Marchand, McAvoy, Swayman, is going to be a handful. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. And obviously the Jets are going to trot out a bit of a different look when it comes to their lineup with no less than 4 changes from what we just saw 48 hours ago.
Yeah, listen, no surprise about Hellebuck coming in. I mean, that was pretty much a guarantee after he got Sunday off and Eric Comrie tended in. But I think, just off the top of my head, I don't think we've had 3 changes to a lineup in any game this season from what's happened before. Ville Heinola is getting in. He's going to play with Logan Stanley, who stays in the lineup. No surprise, that's quite a topic of conversation in the chat. But David Gustafsson getting in on the 4th line. But I think that the most interesting move is Nikita Chibrikov coming up. Listen, before we talk about Chibrikov, what did you think of Brad Lambert's 4-game stint?
Well, I really liked his game in Chicago. Had to go back here and he was good in Buffalo, but I really liked his game in Chicago. Should have had a goal. He was flying. He was noticeable. I think like a lot of the Jets, he wasn't nearly as good on the back-to-back. Didn't notice him as much. And, I think what maybe hurts him a little bit here, Huss, in terms of him getting sent back to the Moose is not so much a reflection of him personally. It's just that line, that second line that the Jets need to get going. They were pretty quiet. And even Saturday when I thought Lambert himself had a very good game, like Cole Perfetti, Vlad Nemestikov, it's been another quiet stretch for those guys. And, clearly the absence of Nikolai Ehlers looms large. I think, Ehlers did a lot of the heavy lifting on that line. And, as much as there is to like about Brad Lambert and what he has to offer in his skill set, it's asking a lot of him to come in and kind of carry that line. And yet, they threw him at center, which is a big ask. And now the Jets are going to face, you look at their schedule here, certainly the next 2 games anyways, Boston, Vegas, big, heavy, experienced teams. So I think this is as much about just trying to get that line as a whole going as it is about seeing, what Nikita Chibrikov can bring, and obviously a whole different element to his game than Brad Lambert's. But yeah, I thought Lambert acquitted himself very nicely. And as Scott Arniel said today, he's going to be back. Is it January 1st? Is it March? Scott Arniel can't say. Obviously injuries will have a say in that. But I don't think Brad Lambert, even though he didn't get a point in these 4 games, has anything to, hang his head over. I thought he did a lot of really good things.
I agree with you on that. I mean, he was noticeable at times. I mean, obviously, you probably lost some sleep missing that open net in the Chicago game for sure. And he'll get a chance to go in and keep on playing a lot with the Manitoba Moose. And I do think he'll be back at some point later on this season. It was interesting. I was kind of thinking about this. Obviously, I was traveling yesterday, and Connor and Remo were holding it down on the program. But when I heard Chibrikov was coming up, I was kind of wondering, there was 2 options for this. You can put him in the Lambert spot on that line and obviously move, Nemestikov back to center. Or potentially you could move up an Iafallo or a Niederreiter from the bottom 6 and have Chibrikov go in there. What did you make of, giving him to Nemestikov and Perfetti and seeing what he can do on line 2?
I love it. I mean, he's been playing a top 6 role on the Moose. He's leading the Moose in scoring. And so they're going to give him a chance to provide some offense as opposed to being a 4th line, checker that's going to play 7 or 8 minutes. Like, not only is he going to go in on the second line, Huss, he's going to probably get a chance on the second power play unit that he was working in on this morning at the morning skate. So I like it. I mean, this is something that I think in the past you could knock the Jets for when they bring a guy up, they weren't always putting that player in the best position to maybe display his strengths. And I think with Chibrikov, they're hoping there's some chemistry with Nemestikov. Chibrikov talked today about the fact that they both can speak Russian, and that helps him feel a little more comfortable.
His English is really good, though.
It is. It really is. Yeah, and he's a fun personality. As Scott Arniel described him, he's got some bite to his game. He's got a little bite to his sound bites as well. There's a lot to like about him. I don't know if Cole Perfetti is brushing up on his Russian, given that he's going to be playing now. Vlad Nemestikov is Russian almost in birthplace only. He's been in North America for most of his life. He came over as a young kid to North America. But yeah, I mean, I like that they're gonna give Chibrikov a chance to display his offensive skills. Clearly he'll do some different things on that line than Brad Lambert did. Scott Arniel described him as a ball. I think he meant to say ball of hate, because Nikita Chibrikov tends to get everybody angry at him just by the way he plays. Like, he plays way bigger than he is. There's almost a borderline dirty element to his game, and I say that with some praise, not to demean him at all. And, I think maybe what the Lambert, Perfetti, Nemestikov trio was missing was a guy to to go in and I think John Liu described it this morning, and I love this term, be a honey badger on that line, like a guy to go in, get his nose dirty, go get some pucks, win some battles. Not that Vlad Nemestikov can't do that. He does a very good job of that. I think that line just needed some help, and they're going to get it a completely different look. And yeah, I mean, I think what you mentioned, Iafallo, Niederreiter, those are certainly options as well. And, if they don't like how this looks, I think we could see that happen. I think if you're the Jets, you're probably loath to move Niederreiter up at this point, just because the Lowry line with Niederreiter, Appleton, that is your identity line. And I don't think you want to be taking away from your identity line, especially facing a team like the Bruins where, that line's going to be out there against Pasternak and, doing some heavy lifting. So the Iafallo thing, they've seen that before. Obviously, they could go back to that. But I like that they're putting Nikita Chibrikov. They're going to give him a chance to show off his strengths here right off the hop, and I think that's a good thing.
What about Gus coming in on the fourth line? And we heard from Arneal just a minute ago. I mean, I think it just shows how well Rasmus Kupari has played in that role so far that we've seen so little of David Gustafsson, because I can't imagine, even as high as they were on Rasmus at the start of the year, I don't think the plan was for Gus to have seen so little action up until this point of the season.
Yeah, he's played two games out of 29, 27 healthy scratches. Did not have that on the bingo card. I figured, Huss, like 29 games in, if you had asked me at the beginning of the year, I might have predicted that Kupari and Gustafsson were like 15 and 14 or something. That's assuming everyone was healthy, that it was almost 50-50. Those guys would almost rotate in a little bit. But I think the fact they haven't really speaks to how good Rasmus Kupari has been and what he's brought to this team. Now, I think the door has opened a little bit here for Gustafsson to get in, because, one of the things Kupari is he's part of the penalty kill, which I think we would all agree, Huss, the penalty kill has stumbled a little bit here lately. And, David Gustafsson can kill penalties as well. I think part of bringing him in is to see if, a different look on the penalty kill maybe can get that going in a bit better direction. Not to pin it on Rasmus Kupari that the penalty kill has kind of sprung a leak, but it has. And so that will give them a little bit different look there. And I just think you've got a hungry player in David Gustafsson, no doubt, absolutely chomping at the bit to get in. And, the Jets, they could use all the help they can get in terms of motivation and energy and all that. And so you're going to get an injection of that from Chibrikov. No doubt Billy Heinola coming back in, brings some of that. And David Gustafsson, I suspect, is going to bring some real energy on that fourth line, which, as good as they've been, the Jets as a whole have struggled to score lately. And, that's the only knock I would have against Rasmus Kupari. Like, if he had a little more finish around the net, he could be in your top six. He could be your line center. It's just that, unfortunately, the hands aren't necessarily there. And not that David Gustafsson necessarily brings a whole lot more offense. I think the potential there is there for maybe a little bit more. And they're obviously hoping that Gustafsson can maybe, help the PK, maybe chip in a little bit, bring some of that excitement that he's going to have for playing just the third time in 30 games.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, it'd be interesting to see how that line plays tonight. Now, listen, I know that, there's lots of talk about, Logan Stanley and Billy and Colin Miller and the sixth defenseman and who's in. If we have time, we'll get to that. But let's talk about the top line, which is really going to be what carries this team moving forward. There has been some brilliance from that line at times. There's been a few ugly games. Hard not to notice the dash threes beside all of their names in the Columbus game. Where are you right now on how that line is playing, Mike, and what is going to be expected of them through these three games at home this week if the Jets want to get back in the win column and make a push to Minnesota at the top of the division?
Well, we talk about the Jets' schedule and how much they've played. there's no forwards play as much as those top three, Scheifele, Velarde, Connor. And, I thought on Sunday, Huss, quite frankly, they did not have anything left in the tank. Like, it was completely on empty. And it reflected in their play. Obviously, it reflected in the stat sheet and in the final result. And, I'm not going to take that one last game or a couple other games that we can pick apart in the last couple weeks and say that's who they are. Because I think their overall body of work was trending in a better direction. Don't forget, this is a group that early in the year, I think they were being outscored something like 9-2 at 5-on-5. I believe now Kenny Weeb was mentioning this morning, I think they're now 18-17 on the plus side. So they're +1, but they were -7 to start the year. So they've swung that around. Now, +1 is still not great at all for a top line. You'd like that to be obviously a lot bigger, but when you're climbing out of a -7 hole at goal differential at 5-on-5, they've started to do that. Now they have to continue it. And yes, they need that. The Jets need to get that line going again for sure. We'll see if a little bit of rest and recuperation here can do the trick tonight. And the other thing, Huss, that magnified with that group is, and maybe it's all related again to energy and all that, the power play has just gone ice cold. They're 2 for their last 18. So, they're not doing a ton at 5-on-5. Certainly they had a good game in Chicago and Mark Scheifele pots the winner. And it was a good play by that whole line. They helped win that game. But, they've had some tough games lately at 5-on-5. Clearly the power play is struggling. And I think Nikolai Ehlers' absence is certainly a part of that. They did score on their last power play the other day, and that one looked a lot more direct, which is what Scott Arniel, less cute, less looking for the perfect play, a little more directness. So we'll see if they can build off that. But yeah, I mean, the top line, like, we can debate all we want about who's on the fourth line and who's on the third D pair. At the end of the day, success and failure is largely determined by how your stars play. And they weren't very good on Sunday. I expect they'll be a lot better tonight.
Well, and Mike, you mentioned that the power play's gone a little cold. It's interesting. I mean, both the PK units of these teams are right beside each other, 19th and 20th in the league. The power plays could not be more different when you look at the body of work for the season. Now, granted, the Jets have kind of come back to the pack a little bit. Right. They've dipped below 30%, which is still a gaudy number. But you got to go all the way down to 32 out of 32 teams for the Boston Bruins. Just 12% on the season. And maybe this is a game that the PK can either not be counted on very much, although I guess we'll see about that, or get into a bit of a groove. But I am with you. The one thing the Winnipeg Jets really could do to help their fortunes in these next couple games against very, very tough teams is to get back to what they've been doing on the power play. Although I think we are, once again, and this is not new because Dick Ehlers has been out for a little bit, we've seen just how big of a difference he makes when he's in the lineup, and his return cannot come soon enough.
The good news is he skated on his own prior to the morning skate today. That's just step one, but a good step in the right direction for sure. And the Jets have practices finally. They have not practiced much at all here lately with the schedule, but they're going to practice tomorrow. They play Thursday. They'll practice Friday, play Saturday. I don't expect Ehlers is an option at all for this homestand. But then after Saturday, they don't play till next Tuesday in San Jose. Is that a possibility a week from today? I think the Jets would love to see that, and they'll have some practice time to get Ehlers, going. But, for now, they have to make work with what they have. And there's enough talent in this lineup still on the power play at 5-on-5, enough depth that as much as they miss Nikolai Ehlers, they should have enough to compensate for life without him. And I found it really interesting, Huss, like morning skates, you've been to lots. they tend to be their Groundhog Day, right? They do the same thing. Teams do the same thing every single morning skate, except the Jets added a wrinkle to theirs today. Near the end of the morning skate, Scott O'Neill had a half ice 3-on-2 kind of a battle drill. And he was asked about that after. That was very much by design. That was a message. That was a reminder to his group to get back to the basics. Less sizzle, more steak is one way to look at it. And, that's not something the Jets typically do on a morning skate. As Scott O'Neill said, we haven't had practice time, and he wanted to try and drill that into his group. So I think that shows, they spent some time on video trying to get back to a more direct style of game. And then they did some drills on the ice today, and we'll see if they can translate that. Because one thing we know about playing the Boston Bruins, sizzle doesn't normally cut it. You need some steak. You need meat and potatoes kind of hockey. And the Jets, to not to use too many food analogies, meat and potatoes had kind of become the bread and butter of the Jets' DNA. They've kind of got away from that lately.
Mike McIntyre with us, getting ready for the
I'm
Jets
hungry now.
and the
I'm
Boston
hungry.
Bruins. Yeah, well, it's just about lunchtime. You can go crush something on your way back. It's funny you mentioned that Nikolai Ehlers potentially for next week. I kind of thought that with him getting on the ice today, he might be pushing potentially to get back in on Saturday for his old pal Patty Laine and the Habs coming to town.
I wouldn't. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV or on the internet. So don't take that, folks, as me ruling him out. I don't know what his kind of healing path here. We don't even know what the exact injury is. Or we do know that it was day to day, and then it became something more. And then I think a week ago, Scott O'Neill said he hoped it would be 7 to 10. That was 7 days ago. So if you extrapolate, 10 would take you to Friday. He'd love to play against his best buddy, Patrick Laine, for what should be just a terrific and fun night at the rink. So could he make it back? Again, there's going to be practice tomorrow, morning skate Thursday, practice Friday. Could he get back in time? Yeah, don't totally rule it out. I'm sure there'd be a little extra motivator there for sure for him.
Well, my next guest actually was at the Bell Center on the weekend and got a chance to. I watched some of the game on Amazon last night, and I'll say this about Laine. He looks good, but I'm a Habs hater for life, but I actually kind of am coming around to wanting to watch this team more and seeing it because I think myself and a lot of people are really pulling for Patrick to kind of get back to the star player, and he has shown glimpses. I will say this, and I'm going to ask Chris about this in a minute. If you were watching the Amazon game yesterday, he scored early on, and then he was playing with Kirby Dach and Slafkovsky, and there was a point in the game where Dach got the puck. They got it in. He made a nice pass over to Laine inside the blue line where he had a little bit of space, and it looked like he was going to rip one. And the Amazon games are incredible because they have extra mics in the crowd. You can really feel the crowd. It sounded like 22,000 people were standing up and saying something. Just the buzz that he is giving there. Anyways, I'm really looking forward to Saturday's game with Laine and the Habs coming in. But two big ones first, Vegas on Thursday and the Boston Bruins tonight. Mike, we'll look forward to all of your reporting and coverage in the Winnipeg Free Press. Thanks for doing this. And unfortunately, we did not have time to have the exact same conversation we've had about the 6 defensemen. We'll have to put that one off maybe for next week when I'm sure it'll be evergreen content for us here on WST.
It is. Speaking of Groundhog Day, that is one you can bank on for sure.
Thanks, pal. Take it easy. All right. Hey, speaking of the Jets, gang, a couple things to mention, and I know I did right off the top of the show, but if you haven't got your tickets to join us for the WST holiday party at the Winnipeg Jets holiday game, jump on it before seats are gone. Go to winnipegjets.com/WST. A week Saturday, the 21st. the hated Minnesota Wild coming in. Jets could potentially sweep the season series against them with the win on Saturday night. So would love to see you there. Grab your tickets. Of course, all your tickets come with a beverage. We'll probably have more than one at the game. We'll get together before the game in the bar outside section 316. So jump on that and join us. Of course, that is the Home for the Holidays game. It is going to be tons of giveaways and prizes at the game. So a perfect time to join us. If you haven't yet, for one of our Winnipeg Sports Talk games, and I hope we'll see a bunch of you that have joined us for previous ones out there as well. And one other thing from the Jets right now, they've got the holiday bundle going, and this is a great deal. $109 will get you 2 tickets and a Winnipeg Jets toque, 6 games to choose from. Predators on the 7th of January, Canucks on the 14th of January, the Flames on the 26th, Feb 7 against the Islanders, Feb 24 against the Sharks, or April 16th against the Anaheim Ducks. Those are available at Jets Gear. You can find out more on all the Jets socials about everything that they've got going in. Now listen, just before we bring in Chris Meaney, a huge happy holidays from our friends at Princess Auto who are getting ready for the big day in a couple weeks. Of course, Princess Auto would be a great place to pop by to take care of some of that Christmas shopping, because that's where you'll find the most unique assortment, the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need for the projects on your list or to start something new for 2025 is available right now at Princess Auto. 3 Manitoba locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West in the city, and of course for the fine folks out in Brandon as well. You can also shop online today, 24/7, 365, just in time for the holidays at princessauto.com. You know, I was in Minneapolis with my friend Johnny, who's a big whiskey guy, on the weekend, and we went by one of the liquor stores in the States, and he picked up a couple things that he couldn't get here, and we got talking about the Canadian Club Classic, the Invitation Series. It was just released last month, the 18-year-old high proof. And of course, this is the first ever 18-year-old whiskey from Canadian Club. The elevated expression offers the well-known, smooth, well-balanced taste of Canadian Club Classic, carefully aged and bottled at a higher proof for a full-bodied experience. And listen, this is not just a special edition. It's also the gold medal winner at the International Wine and Spirit Competition. And it's here until it isn't right now. It's a one-time release. It is available throughout Manitoba, limited quantities at some stores, and it's only $79.95. So for holiday entertaining, for enjoying yourself, for gift giving, for that whiskey lover on your list, pick it up today before it's gone at your local Manitoba liquor marts. The Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof, the second issue of the Invitation Series. And as we bring on Meaney, a huge shout out to our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk, the fencing and overhead door specialist since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences. And heading into the new year, if it's time to replace your garage door, they've got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors, one perfect to match your home and add value to it at the same time. Give them a call, 452-2700. Excuse me, the Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. Check them out online, wallacedoors.com, wallacefences.com, and pop down to their showroom on Lowson Crescent off of Kenniston. All right, this is going to be fun. Always love chopping it up with my friend Chris Meaney, but it's the first time to have him on Winnipeg Sports Talk and officially congratulate him on his move as the fantasy and betting expert, and that he certainly is, at NHL.com for the NHL. Meaney, best of the season to you, and congrats on the new gig.
Thanks, man. Yeah, living the dream over here, smiling ear to ear, thrilled to be part of the NHL family, and thrilled to join you here today as well, man. Hustler, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you know what? It was funny. I was in the Twin Cities at the Vikings game on the weekend, and on Saturday, I got a pick from our pal Jeremy, and there you guys were at the Bell Center, flying the colors down, watching your beloved Habs. How was the weekend in Montreal?
It was fantastic. Yeah, Gates was there, and he kind of said the same thing you said a few moments ago with your previous guest. Not a big Habs guy, but was certainly rooting for Patrik Laine. And you're right, man. There was a buzz in the building last night. I've been to the Bell Center a few times. It's always a great atmosphere, but even with Montreal near the bottom of the standings, and the way that they're playing hockey, certainly a good week for them here. Rattled off a couple wins in their last few games. There was an electric atmosphere in the building every time he touched the puck, every time he made a little play. You got Lane Hudson there, who's a phenomenal rookie, setting him up on the power play. He's already got 3 power play goals. So it was a blast. I know Gates had a good time to see the Habs maybe choke a little bit in the third period, but ultimately it was a really good time. And, Laine has provided a spark for this team offensively at the moment.
Well, and listen, I mean, the Habs and the Habs culture, they love their star players. It has been a long time since they've had a guy like that. And listen, they took somewhat of a risk. I mean, a lot of money on the cap for 2 years, the unfortunate injury. But it was very clear that he was being welcomed with open arms the second that he ended up there. And, to have a nice start the way that he has, there's incredible buzz for Laine in here. And listen, as much as it is heartbreaking for some Jet fans knowing that, he left, but from where he was last year, to see him embraced like this and causing a buzz that I know gives him a buzz, it's a great story right now in its infancy in Montreal.
Yeah, it is. And just listening to him talk, pregame and postgame, I mean, he's got a smile on his face. I think the first game he said, and I'm paraphrasing, talked about, the ovation that the fans gave him. He said he had never experienced anything like that before. He also joked and said he didn't deserve it. He said after his first game, he thought he played terrible, but he was happy that the Habs won the game. And that's Laine. Yeah, that's Patrick, right? I mean, he's open, he's honest. Even after last night, he said it's the most fun he's had in years, referencing his time in Winnipeg early on in his career as well, with a passionate fan base there in Winnipeg. So, yeah, he has created a bit of a spark, and Martin St. Louis talked about it early on, the team welcoming him in, and then unfortunately the injury that he suffered in the preseason, unable to play for the first couple months of the season. So he's still got a little bit of work to do. He talked about that last night, his 5-5 play, but just having his presence on the power play. I mean, again, I'll reference Lane Hudson as the rookie who's now moved on the top power play for the Canadians. Now you have Cole Caulfield on one side, who has 17 goals in the season. You got Patrik Laine on the other side, and you have to respect both of those guys on the power play. So, yeah, he has, he's created something pretty exciting for Montreal Canadiens fans at the moment. They have a lot of work to do. They got a big a couple games coming up. I know you referenced the game against the Jets. I got a couple against the Red Wings and the Sabres, who are struggling at the moment. So I don't view them as a playoff team, but Montreal taking on that salary, I just thought it was a win for them, right? They had, the money to take on. They're starving for some athletes. And Hustler, when's the last time you remember seeing the Canadians? Like, for years, people have talked about this team being small, bullied in the corner. You mentioned earlier playing with Kirby Dach and Slavkovsky. All three of those guys are at least 6'3". It's been a long time since the Canadians have had some big power forwards like that, and right now it's fun to see.
Well, and of course, I mean, a first, a second, and a third overall draft pick all in the same line as well.
That's right.
And listen, I mean, just while we're at it, because I kind of want to ask you about your thoughts on where the Bruins are right now coming into this game tonight against Winnipeg. It is insane when you look in the East. It's a very different story here in the West. But, I mean, the Habs are the last place team in the East. Like, in the entire East. 25 points. They're 4 points out of a wild card right now.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know if I've ever... And to be honest, they're 11 points from first, I guess I should say, in the division, I guess. Well, Washington's had this great start with 40 points. But I guess the point I'm making is that nothing is determined and everybody is still in it in the East. Even teams like Montreal, the Buffalo Sabres, who haven't won in 7, the Detroit Red Wings. Like, all these teams have sort of had very blab mid starts, and yet they're right in the middle of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the only two teams apart from the Bruins lately under Joe Sacco 7-2, seen a little bit of a bump with the coaching change there. But you mentioned the Sabres, a couple just awful losses from them lately, collapses in the third period, not getting the goaltending. James Reimer played last night. Is confusing to see him between the pipes for the Sabres, maybe trying to create some sort of spark for the team, trying to pick up a W. Detroit can't score goals. Right, they're near the basement with the Predators in terms of just overall shooting percentage. So maybe a little bit unlucky, but
all it took was a trip to Buffalo to pop 5 and 2 in the third when they needed to get the win in the shootout.
Yeah, that's right. They get a couple last night. I mean, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond's been playing fantastic for the Red Wings, so they're getting some contributions from their top guys, but not so much after their top line. And Patrick Kane's had a quiet season as well. But you're right, and something I wasn't completely sure of. I kind of thought so in the back of my head, following the Canadians as closely as I do. This week here is Martin St. Louis' first week behind the bench with the Montreal Canadiens where he's had a full, healthy squad. He just hasn't had that. Caulfield has missed time. Kirby Dach has missed time. Michael Matheson has missed time. There's been a bunch of key contributors for the Canadians who have just missed time over the past couple of years. They're among the leaders in man games missed last season. So right now they're fully healthy. And they've had a good week. So like I said, you got a couple games coming up against the Red Wings, I believe a home and home, and against the Sabres. There's a lot of mediocre teams struggling in the Atlantic Division. Florida's going to do their thing. The Leafs are always strong in the regular season. It looks like they're a little bit different under Craig Berube, and they got a nice tandem in net with Stolarz and Joseph Woll. Boston's playing good at the moment. I'm not a full believer in them. After that, I mean, of course, you got the Lightning and Kucherov, and they'll probably make the playoffs, but I don't expect them to go on a deep run. But after that, again, there's a lot of mediocre teams, not just in the Atlantic, but you can look at the Metro as well. What's happening to the New York Rangers, right? I mean, they're struggling. They've been one of the worst teams at 5-5 this season. The Islanders, the same old Islanders, can't really get any offense. So yeah, there's a few teams that have been surprising. The Washington Capitals are certainly one of them. I think the Devils are legit, but there's some teams in the Eastern Conference that are just, playing 500 hockey, basically. There's no consistency there. So the Habs may be able to make a run, but I don't think they'll make the playoffs.
Well, it's funny you say that because, the Islanders are 500, 11-11-7. And NHL 500 gets you 82 points in the season, which normally would have you a good 15 out of the playoffs. They're just behind. I mean, the Rangers are in the wild card spot with 29, and they played 2 less games, so they're technically 2 above 500. But everyone, Islanders, Flyers, Penguins, Blue Jackets, Sens, Red Wings, Sabres, Habs, all between even and 3 games below 500. So everything's up. We're going to talk to Joe Haggerty a little bit more in depth about the Bruins that are coming into town tonight. But what are your thoughts on the Bruins, and how different are they right now under Joe Sacco on a bit of a heater after such a miserable season that cost Monty his gig?
Yeah, absolutely. Crazy how, that start cost Monty after what he had done in the first couple of seasons.
Didn't take long to get hired again, though.
No, it didn't, right? 5 days, and, and the Blues have been much better lately as well. I think for Boston, they're certainly top heavy, right, with David Pastrnak. Elias Lindholm there had a good start, a good first few games with them, and then he was pretty quiet. Brad Marchand's getting a little bit older, but he can still provide some offense. I think last year when they lost Patrice Bergeron, we were wondering who's going to step up in the middle of the ice, and saw good seasons from Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle, and those 2 centers were very quiet to start under Montgomery, but I've noticed lately Coyle's had, some nice moments. Pavel Zacha's shooting the puck a little bit more. He's seen a boost in ice time. He was really productive last year with David Pastrnak, but when this team doesn't score goals, they don't win a lot of hockey games. They're one of those teams where they win low scoring games, right? They rely on their defense. They rely on their special teams. They're strong in between the net. And, I think some of the blame should have went to the front office, like Jeremy Swayman. They traded Linus Ullmark without having Jeremy Swayman locked up. And he wasn't there throughout camp. He wasn't there to start the season with the team. So now we're here into December now, starting to feel like the first couple weeks was like a training camp for him. So he's starting to play a little bit better hockey, but I don't think that they're a huge threat, to be honest with you. I just feel like their bottom 6 is a little mediocre, and they're going to continue to play low-scoring games. I'm very impressed with what I've seen from the Winnipeg Jets this season. Last year, I was extremely impressed, and I know they're aggressive at the deadline with Monahan and Toffoli, and those two players left. But no surprise that Connor Hellebuck is doing his thing. I think he should be in the MVP conversation. Mark Scheifele's been fantastic. Kyle Connor's game is just well-rounded. I feel like over the past couple of years, give him some love for his defensive game as well. And, Adam Lowry, I remember talking to you about Lowry when heading into the playoffs last year is one of the better defensive players in the National Hockey League. So I like the Jets, and, you get Ehlers back here soon. So I really like what I've seen from Winnipeg. But, we're talking about a lot of mediocre teams in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the division that the Jets are in, with the Avs and the start that the Wild have had. And I've really liked what Colorado did yesterday, acquired Mackenzie Blackwood. He's actually a really good goalie, just, played in a very bad environment over the past couple of years in San Jose. He's been among the leaders in save percentage and high danger save percentage, this season.
Yeah, I wanted to
and then
actually,
you have Dallas.
Yeah, just quickly on Colorado. I mean, from your perspective, Meaney, covering the league the way you do, how significant of an upgrade is that? Now they went from Annunen and Georgiev to Wedgwood and Blackwood, the woodshed, if you will. Because Blackwood actually was getting some results for a San Jose team that can't throw anything out in front of Blackwood the way Colorado can.
No, it's a huge upgrade. It's a huge upgrade for Blackwood. It's a huge upgrade for Colorado. They had the worst team percentage in the NHL, the worst. Georgiev was, I think he led the league in wins last year as a goalie, and that was with Colorado scoring a bunch of goals. Like, he wasn't fantastic. And you look at the numbers, we actually just put an article over at NHL.com/fantasy looking at the numbers for Mackenzie Blackwood. He is the second best save percentage over the last month of the season. And the Sharks' penalty kill has been fantastic. He's had one of the best save percentages while his team has been shorthanded. And overall, he checks a lot of boxes. Some of the edge stats we look at over at NHL.com, high danger save percentage, high danger saves, mid-range saves. Like, he checks a lot of boxes on a bad hockey team in San Jose, a team that is among the leaders in allowing shot attempts and high danger chances. And the Avs, they're on the flip side of that, right? They're among the leaders in eliminating all those high danger and quality scoring chances. So I think that's what Colorado has been missing. You look a couple years ago when they won the Stanley Cup, right? It's a similar squad. Darcy Kemper was just slightly above average. It's all they need is some goaltending above average to stop the puck. And they thought that they weathered the storm in the first few weeks of the season, right? No Arturi Lehkonen, one of the better two-way players, I think, in the league, especially defensively. He's been alongside Nathan McKinnon on the top line since he's been an Av. Jonathan Drouin's been sidelined for most of the season. Valery Nichushkin now back in the lineup. Ross Colton was fantastic to start, missed 17 games with a fractured foot. Now he's back in the lineup, scored in his second game in his return. So, of course, you got the staples in the blue line and Cale Makar and Devon Toews. So the Avs are legit. We all know that. They just needed some goaltending. And then, for Mackenzie Blackwood and Wedgwood, I think it may be a little bit of a split moving forward, but I think Blackwood will take over that net. They gave up a lot to acquire him, and I think he's one of the best kept secrets in the NHL. So it's a big win for the Avs and a big win for him.
I will say this, the Sharks, partly due to Blackwood's play, I think have sort of exceeded some people's expectations. Celebrini's a dynamic young player. Going to be a real fun Calder race with him and Mitchkov and Hudson and some of the other players. But I got to give Mike Greer credit. That's some pretty shrewd asset management, considering what they took Blackwood off Jersey Tans for a 6th rounder.
Yeah. And they got Askarov from the Predators, right? Who's the future for them, right? Georgiev is he's a pending UFA. If he can turn his game around a little bit, maybe they flip him and they get another pick. I wouldn't imagine it would be all that high, but we're going to see Askarov at some point, who's ripping it up in the AHL, and he came up and played a couple games and he looked good. I watched both games, a couple games that he played. I thought he looked fantastic. Celebrini's a stud. He's an 18-year-old kid, right? He's fantastic. You got Fabian Zetterlund, which is a good move as well. He's had a very similar season as Timo Meier. And that trade, right, when they flipped Timo Meier and they got Fabian Zetterlund, a package involving Fabian Zetterlund. He's been playing with Macklin Celebrini. You got William Eklund there as well. Those are two guys that I thought would make the Four Nations roster. They didn't. Maybe we see them in the Olympics, but those are two young players Mikael Granlund has been phenomenal this season. You know all about Tyler Toffoli. I know all about Toffoli as well. He just scores goals wherever he plays hockey. He's a veteran presence there as well. Jake Wallman on the blue line. Timothy Liljegren they picked up as well from the Leafs. So, they got some players that could score some goals, right? A couple weeks ago, they had 2 games where they had 7 goals and 8 goals, right? I think they put in 7 against the Kings, who are playing pretty good hockey since that blowout. But yeah, San Jose's fun. And I think they got a lot of nice pieces. So Mike Grier is doing a good job. Will Smith is another one. I watched him, NCAA hockey last year. It was just so phenomenal to watch him play. And, I think he's hurt at the moment, but he went through a nice stretch there when the Sharks are scoring some goals. So if you're a San Jose fan, there's reasons to be optimistic for sure.
Now, Meaney, I'm not talking about looking up. I'm talking about looking down. Way, way down. To number 32 of 32. The Nashville Predators. We raised the banner for them. The off-season champions. They got the banner on July 5th or 6th or whatever, and are now the worst team in the National Hockey League. They've lost 7 in a row. What the hell is going on in Music City? This did not seem possible.
No, I know. And I was right there with everybody. I was ready to crown them too. I said, listen, this team went to the playoffs last year, essentially getting offense from one line, right? And Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly and Gustav Nyquist been okay this year. And of course, you got a horse in the back end and Roman Josi. And UC Saros, it's not his fault, right? Those numbers I was sharing about Mackenzie Blackwood, when I was looking at some of those numbers, UC Saros is right there. UC Saros, imagine where they would be without him. It would be even worse. They have a league low 7 wins, and he is among the leaders in a lot of the same categories I was talking about: high danger save percentage, penalty kill percentage. He has been really good for them, but they're not giving him any offense. I thought they would turn it around a couple weeks ago when I was looking. A lot of their players had career low shooting percentage. I think Roman Josi had 2.4, and then he's been on a little bit of a run lately. Forsberg was down. Ryan O'Reilly was down. Marchessault and Stamkos were career lows in terms of shooting percentage for them as well. But, now looking at it, it's they don't have anything down the middle of the ice. It's really what I see when I watch Nashville. There's been a rotation of second-line centers and Colton Sissons and Tommy Novak, and it's just not really working out at the moment. We know what Stamkos can bring to the table. We know what Jonathan Marchessault can bring to the table. When you sign those 2 players, and they both had 40-plus goals last year, you'd say, okay, maybe they don't score a combined 80. But, man, give us 70. That's what you would think when, if you're Barry Trotz and the Predators and you're signing those 2 players who won multiple Stanley Cups combined. So it's too far behind at the moment. They made a couple moves, but Trotz has talked about maybe selling some assets and really rebuilding. So it's at this point here in December, where they are in the standings, it's completely shocking. I don't know. They are getting some shot attempts, but the shooting percentage is maybe luck will turn around a little bit. But it's hard to imagine this team going on the same run last year with 17, 18 games in a row with a point. They'd have to do something like that, which is just, rare to do, in back-to-back seasons. It's tough go for them.
I'm just pulling, you dive into the numbers a little bit of Nashville. And I'm looking here, Marchessault and Gustav Nyquist have, the same offensive output as Mason Appleton this year. Right. And that's not Appleton's a very reliable player on a really good third line. Adam Lowry has as many goals as Steven Stamkos and 4 more assists.
It's remarkable.
They have no double digits goal scorers, and the Jets have 4. You just wonder how in the world this team could be so offensively impotent right now with all the money that they spent in the offseason for guys that have done it their entire careers.
Well, you look at I'm just looking at 5-5 shooting percentage right now. 5%, right? It's the lowest mark in the NHL, and the Capitals are up at the top at 12%. That's a surprising team as well. They have a few players that are, they have career high shooting percentages at the moment. Connor McMichael is a nice young player, I believe, in the breakout, but Dylan Strome and even Ovechkin at the time. No surprise to see Ovechkin, but he was on pace for him the best goal season of his career, right? And remarkable to think about it at his age and what he has done over the course of his career. But yeah, for the Predators, and again, maybe some of that puck luck will turn around for them. Forsberg is still shooting the puck just like he always shot the puck. Yossi's been, very aggressive with his shot attempts as well. But, at this point, what does Barry Trotz do? Does he make another move to get a centerman to try to, spark the wingers that he picked up? Kind of seems like, we're a little bit late in the season to do something like that, given where they are in the standings.
Hey, before we go, you mentioned Washington. I mean, if you pull up the overall standings, now Washington and Minnesota played 27 games. The Jets have played 2 extras, but there's 3 teams in the league that are at 40 points right now, tied for first, if you will, at the top of the standings by points. The Jets were a team that a lot of people had written off beforehand and said, well, this is probably not a playoff team, which is a little surprising considering what they did in the regular season. I think a lot of that was based on just how ugly games 2 through 5 were in the Colorado series. But you got a Minnesota team that has been, phenomenal. 11-2-3 on the road right now. And the Washington Capitals were a team that, listen, there were basically 15 playoff teams last year and just someone else that had to get in. They were that team in the East who've been amazing. How would you rank the most surprising team? Like, of those 3 teams that have 40 points, which is the most surprising to you, Meaney, as to where they stand right now?
It's definitely the Capitals. Yeah, I'm not super shocked with Winnipeg's start, just given what they have, between the pipes and Hellebuck. I think I'm more surprised in the offense and, them scoring goals. Last year, this was like 27 games in a row. It felt like it was like 3 or fewer goals that they allowed, right? But, they were scoring goals to start the season, left, right, and center. So, but it's definitely Washington, right? It's kind of what I talked about with, some of the players that have, experiencing career high shooting percentage, seasons at the moment. But at the same time, this was a team that I thought improved. I thought they were one of the most improved teams in the offseason. You're very familiar with Pierre-Luc Dubois. He had 2 good seasons, I thought, in Winnipeg. Like, production-wise, he was getting a chance on the top power play. He was getting minutes that he should have gotten in LA. There were times where he was on the 4th line. For a majority of the season with the Kings, he was on the 3rd line. There were only a handful of games where they tried him with like Adrian Kempe or Anze Kopitar, some of their better players. He hardly ever got top power play time. So without Ovechkin there, he's been given a little bit more power play time. I saw him firsthand on Saturday. I thought he had a pretty good game. Jacob Chikrin was a really good addition. He is a very strong defenseman. He can bring it offensively. He is, playing for a new contract as well. And they have Logan Thompson as a goalie that they brought over. They got the most that they could have, I think, out of Charlie Lindgren. And Logan Thompson's been fantastic. He's especially amazing in the Bell Center. He had 4 breakaway saves in the 3rd period to keep the Capitals in that game. So, and I mentioned Connor McMichael, right? Strome and Ovechkin had chemistry last year. Not surprising to see the chemistry at the start of the season from those guys, but, Connor McMichael's breakout season, Andrew Mangiapane I think he's got a 30-goal season on his resume. And I know he's not doing a whole lot, but he improves the bottom 6. And then you have Waugh there on the blue line. So they're improved on the blue line. They're improved offensively, and they're improved between the pipes. Now, in the playoffs, I don't know if I would really take them, against the Hurricanes or against the Devils, but this is a team that's going to be there. And it's going to be very, very different than what it was last year when they played the Rangers in the opening round of the playoffs, and they didn't really find any offense against the Blue Shirts. So I'm very impressed and surprised with them. On the flip side, the Wild, right? Kaprizov is doing his thing. He's tied with the league lead. Marco Rossi is legit. He's having a breakout season. He was a top pick. This is his 2nd full season in the NHL. I like him tonight to pick up a point. And then Matt Boldy's among the leaders in shots and goals at 5-5. And they're doing this without Joel Eriksson Ek, and they got Spurgeon, their captain, on the blue line, Brock Faber. So they got some really nice pieces. They're coached well. They're strong between the pipes with Gustafsson there as well. But it's definitely the Caps, Hustler.
Chris Meaney is with us. You can follow him on X at Chris Meaney and check him out in his new home at NHL.com. You need to give people a little bit of a tease on all the content that you're cranking out at NHL.com now.
Yeah, I appreciate you every day pumping out picks and some props and some fantasy plays over at NHL.com/fantasy, diving into some of the fun games that they have, pre-play and goalie picks on Tuesday. We have the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast on Monday and Thursday. And yeah, we just got a lot of fun things in the works. You mentioned the Twitter handle there on X. I appreciate that, at Chris Meaney. So you can check out all the work and doing some video content and some plays and really diving into all the cool things that the NHL has dove into themselves over the past couple of years with the edge stats and taking a look at like shot speed and skating speed, offensive zone time percentage, high danger shots, and just really diving into the game. Like if you're a hockey fan, I think you'll like a lot of what we're doing over at NHL.com. So really appreciate you, taking the time here. And no talk about your Chiefs. They continue to get it done, and I kind of like how much they're bothering everybody in the NFL with the way that they're winning football games lately. But yeah, I do appreciate you. Maybe we'll see a rematch of the Chiefs and the Eagles in the Super Bowl again.
The haters are mad, and they are. Listen, they were already nuclear going into this weekend, and I have to admit, I just sat back after the doink goes in to win the game. Another 2-point win. 7 straight games, not covering a spread, but yet 12-1 on top of the league. And hey, your Birds have had a great turnaround. Just quickly on that before we go, did you catch Brandon Graham yesterday on WIP?
I did.
Listen, I full disclosure, you may or may not know this, I'm the biggest Nick Sirianni hater there is. I cannot stand that guy, and it has been painful seeing the team play so well after that 2-2 start because I thought he was good as gone. Although I did take great pleasure in tweeting out that interview and saying, don't worry, Eagles fans, Sirianni's got full control of this right now. From an Eagles standpoint, with the team playing and in the spot that they are, how concerning is it to hear that from another player? It sounds like it's McNabb and T.O. all over again.
And it's funny you say that. I don't know if you caught on social media between McNabb and T.O.
They
McNabb
couldn't
was
help
talking
themselves.
No, they couldn't, right? And T.O. got in there and he's sticking up for his boy, A.J. Brown, and taking some shots at Donovan McNabb. Yeah, they're winning football games, right? They've won 9 straight, which is tied for a franchise record. Their defense is phenomenal, which wasn't the case when the Eagles played the Chiefs a couple years ago.
It is.
That's how it's different this year compared to last year. Through the draft, some of their players have really picked it up. The second year players and the rookie corners and Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. But it's not something that you want to hear from a team that's winning football games. And the identity of their team should be their run game behind what I think is the best offensive line in football. And you can see what Saquon Barkley's doing behind that offensive line. So, yeah, they went into Baltimore, Jalen Hurts threw the football 18 times, and they won the football game. And I'm sure that A.J. Brown was a little upset that he didn't get a couple more targets, but at the end of the day, they're racking up wins, and I think that's really all that matters. But it was really interesting to hear Graham's comments on the relationship between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. And I think for AJ, I think Eagles fans would just like to see him just be quiet, kind of keep that in-house. If you have a problem with the offense or your quarterback, maybe, you talk about that, in the locker room as opposed to, bringing it to the media and, that the media is going to talk about it, right? They're going to bring more attention to it. So, didn't like hearing that, but I think they're still in a good spot.
Chris, thanks so much for doing this. Hopefully we can do it again soon on a more reg basis. Now you're with the National Hockey League. And by the way, tell the bosses, now that you're with the big league, you got to make the rounds. So the red carpet will be rolled out for you when we can get you out to Winnipeg at some point.
I was telling Gatesy that over the weekend. I can't wait to check out a game in Winnipeg, maybe a whiteout game. I'd love to be there for that. Well,
it looks like the Jets have a pretty good head start on a playoff spot, so that certainly is the plan in Winnipeg for the spring right now. But lots of hockey left to be played, including a big one tonight against the Boston Bruins at Canada Life Center. You be well, and looking forward to the pods and all the content at NHL.com and NHL Fantasy. Thanks for doing this, pal.
Thanks, man. Keep up the good work. We'll talk soon, brother.
Appreciate you. At Chris Meaney, give him a follow if you haven't already. And again, check out the work in his new home at NHL.com. That was great. All right, listen, I want to get to fans first, fan feedback. And I'm sure you'll have some takes on the lineup, which you can throw in. But I do want to hit you with the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp, Waverly and McGillivray. And it's what I was just talking about with Meaney. The most surprising team in the NHL this year. whether it be from a good standpoint, i.e., Washington, Minnesota, Winnipeg, or, which I think is my vote, the Nashville Predators at the bottom of the standings now, just about at Christmas. Let us know in the chat. And of course, when we do fan feedback for our friends, it is brought to you by fansfirst.ca, the number one spot for both buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market. I actually just realized that I had both my pairs of seats for tonight's game. So, as a season ticket holder, when you do make that sort of mistake and realize that you can only sit in so many seats at once, Fans First, the best place to jump on it. So, 206 row 1. I think they're still up right now, and I dropped it. But bottom line with Fans First is when you're buying tickets, and take this from someone that went and bought seats on StubHub, and once the fees and everything got added on, there was about an extra 40% on my Vikings ticket, which drives me crazy. When you're buying tickets at Fan First, what you see is what you pay, period. No fees. That's it. Check it out today at fansfirst.ca. All right, over into the chat. I will quickly, before we get to the feedback on the NHL, I will say hi to our pal Larry, who says, laugh now, Huss. It's going to all catch up to the Chiefs, and it will hit hard. Larry, may I remind you that these same comments were coming last year. Remember the Chiefs losing on Christmas Day, getting the lump of coal from Santa, and losing at home to the Raiders at Arrowhead on Christmas Day? And after having a bunch of losses already, and everyone said, oh, this team is done. There's no way they can repeat. Well, and then they went on the road, and they beat the Bills, and they went on the road, and they beat the Ravens, and then they won the Super Bowl again, and now they're chasing history, something a team has never done before, a three-peat of Super Bowl championships. So, listen, if you want to beat the Chiefs, you better have a nice lead in the fourth quarter, because I got to tell you, Patrick Mahomes with the football in his hand and the game on the line is better than anybody walking planet Earth. And don't ask me, look at the numbers. EPA is like sort of a war stat for performance. Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter is a 50. Next in the National Football League is Josh Allen with a 33. And Allen has been incredible this year and will be the MVP of the league, barring any sort of a catastrophe going down the stretch. The bottom line is this team thrives in close games. They find a way to win each and every day, and nobody handles the clock in 4 6-minute drills more better than Kansas City does. Don't give an opening. But as they say, could they lose? Absolutely. Is it a sure thing? Definitely not. But there's two teams right now with one loss. And in the AFC, the Bills losing on the weekend has put KC in a great spot moving forward with a loss to give. Still hoping to get that first seed, the bye, and the path to the Super Bowl going through Arrowhead Stadium. I'm seeing this. Clip this, Remo. Thank you. Feel free. There's a lot of it. That was a little bit of a Chiefs rant. The Wild. Remis, what do you think for this fan feedback? Like, I mean, of the Jets, I don't think the Jets are the biggest surprise. I mean, I think that based on, like, we should know that this team was capable of playing at a high level and able to put up wins. Like, the Wild have been really, really good this year, beyond my expectations, but they're getting goaltending, much like Winnipeg is. Gustafson's been phenomenal. I expect him to maybe be the starter when we're talking about the Four Nations for the Swedes. I think he certainly deserves it. But I think I'm sort of with Meaney. I'm with Washington on the high end, but to me, the biggest disaster of the season has to be the Nashville Predators, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah, just going through the standings, Washington number 1. Everyone wrote them off last year saying, oh, this is the worst team to make the playoffs, in years. Their goal differential was terrible, but you had Ovechkin scoring goals, and I thought the Dubois trade made sense for them, even if he did disappoint in LA. They had a role for him. Dylan Strome, making his name known as a quality top-line center. So definitely surprised they're number 1. And yeah, the most surprising thing that I heard there was that Stamkos has the same
like that
number
stat I
of
pulled out?
goals as Adam Lowry. This is a guy who's getting top line minutes, getting top power play minutes, one of the best goal scorers of all time. Absolutely shocking to hear that he would have the same number of goals at this point of the season, 28 games in, than Adam Lowry. No offense to Adam Lowry, but he's a third-line center. He plays a shutdown role and doesn't play power play. Shocking that it would be that low. And I know Jonathan Marchessault expressed frustration after they lost to the Habs, saying he doesn't know, who he's going to be playing on a line with from shift to shift. It's not going well. And sometimes, you take the bag, Huss, and that's what you got to do, but then you got to live with the consequences, and it's bad. Minus 27 goal differential. It's among the worst. That is the worst in the West. Worse than Chicago, who's not even trying to win games, Hustler. Worse than Anaheim. Worse than San Jose, who's actually been pretty good. We crown them the offseason champions. They're the worst team in the West. It's crazy. Never
the West, the NHL. Like, there's nobody in the East that's close to the 20 points that those guys are at right now.
They're at the bottom. It's out of
32
control.
of 32,
Worse
baby.
in the NHL.
Maybe that'll just mean that we can get some cheaper tickets for the Jets in Nashville at the end of February when the team is back there in Music City.
Man. And we were like, bring in Barry Trotz. Make him goodbye, Kevin Cheveldayoff. We'll just give Barry, the coach and GM, give him what he wants. Isn't that what we said? We'll give him a lifetime supply of beer.
We did, yeah. That was to be the coach. This is his first gig as the GM. And I don't know. I mean, they opened up the checkbook. They got Brady Shea, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault. They got 7 damn wins this season. Just looking at some of these other comments. I think Phyllis was saying it's the Wild were the biggest surprise. They're not going to keep this up. They're her biggest surprise. Chips McGee, the Predators were fool's gold. And Pittsburgh is a surprise too. Didn't expect them to be so bad. They're getting it back together a little. They got a tough one tonight against the they got the Colorado Avalanche at home tonight. It'll be Wedgwood playing, and the Comet, the Mild, will hopefully peter out again. It's a very different story in the West than it is in the East right now. That is for sure. Again, great stuff for fan feedback from Fans First. Fans First again, by fans, for fans, no fees. Check out the site today at fansfirst.ca. All right, we've got actually Hags coming up. I tell you what, speaking of Little Brown Jug, where we tried to bribe Barry Trotz to come to Winnipeg, maybe the best moves that happen are the ones you don't make, because, of course, this Winnipeg team is having a great run right now, and don't mind at all seeing what's happened to the Nashville Predators. But big cheers to our friends over at Little Brown Jug.
Day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Hey, speaking of cheers from Little Brown Jug, look who's in chat, Reem. Narv, the main event. South Beach Narvi. What's going on? Narv says the Jets are the biggest surprise. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's a few others that'll be up there, but to many people, the Jets were a very big surprise. Narv, one of our many former 1290 legends. And Rod Z, I see you. We will get to the Coolbet lines in a minute. We've got a 3-game partner parlay we put together in the lock shop. And then Rod, who's firing out all sorts of awesome stats, as he always does. Rod and I both added an extra game in, so we actually have a 5-game or 2 that we'll touch on first. But right now, don't forget, if you pop by your local Boston Pizza, looking to take care of some gift cards, they've got an unbelievable deal right now. Buy a $50 BP gift card, get a free $10 bonus card And listen, if you have a long gift list or buying for the office, check out this deal. If you buy $1,000 of gift cards, you'll get an additional 10%, which would mean a 30% bonus in total. So another $300 in gift cards on gift card orders of $1,000 or more. And hey, BP is a great place to have that holiday party. You can try the holiday menu in the dining room, get a casual party in the sports bar, or have the BP catering set up and serve your office. If you're not making the game, of course, pick a player contest and more at all your local BPs for the game tonight. Puck drop at 7 p.m. And shout out to our friends at Royal Sports. I was with Greg last night. Man, they are so busy for Christmas right now. And expecting a couple weeks of very brisk sales. Why? Because it is the biggest and best sports store literally anywhere. And you can take care of so much of that Christmas list with one trip over to Royal Sports at 750 Pembina Highway. When you want Jets jerseys, hoodies, toques, hats, gear, nobody has a bigger selection than Royal Sports. While you're at it, check out all the exclusive Bomber gear they've got, all the new hats coming in right now, and the best in merchandise from the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, international soccer, you name it, they've got it. The biggest hockey section in town, you need a new pair of blades or some equipment, a new stick, they've got you covered. And then on the other side, whether it be Herschel, the Yeti section, so much cool stuff on the King Skate, Snow, and Surf side waiting for you. But you got to get down soon to get it before it's gone and before the big day on the 25th of December, Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Check them out on Instagram as well, at Royal Sports Pembina, for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. All right, we're going to get to the Coolbet lines in a minute, but let's welcome in for more on tonight's game, the latest on the Bruins, with our pal Joe Haggerty.
You mentioned Josh Morrissey. Oh, sorry, one second. Let me just load it in.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. We're still live, though.
Yeah, no worries. We caught up with Joe just after the morning skates heading into the program today. And here's our chat setting up tonight's Jets-Bruins tilt with Joe. Joe, great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk. The Jets are getting the Bruins at a time where their play of late is a heck of a lot better than what it was earlier this season. You know, it's kind of funny. I'm pulling up the standings. Oh, there the Bruins are once again in a playoff spot. It's still relatively early in the season, but when you think back to what has happened with Boston so far, firing a coach, having a rough start, the very, very toxic contract negotiation with their star goaltender, this has not been the normal start to the season that you might have thought the Bruins have had to about a third of the way.
No, the first 20 games were very unlike the Boston Bruins. The vibe around the room, the way they were performing on the ice, like usually you can predict exactly how the Bruins are going to play. You know when they're having success, you know when they're not, but you know also what you can rely on them from them every single night, which is, you know, great two-way play, great defense, really good in their own zone, great goaltending, good to great goaltending, I should say. Opportunistic offense, special teams really good. Like there's the hard to play against and always a very solid team that doesn't beat themselves. And they just didn't look anything like themselves in the first 20 games of the year. And at times it was really difficult to put your finger on exactly what was going on with the team because it was so radically different from everything that you'd seen the last 5, 10 plus years out of this Bruins team. They've been very consistent with their identity and the way that they play. But it's since the coaching change, it's been back to exactly what you expect from the Bruins. The defense is way better. I think they're still averaging below 2 goals a game on the last 9 games, 7-2 under Joe Sacco. The penalty kill is up in the 90% range, higher than 90% as far as the kill rate. The power play is starting to get back online. That's still struggling a little bit. The offense is kind of coming in fits and starts. But they're back to playing a solid two-way game where they're a hard team to play against. They're really stingy defensively. They're opportunistic offensively. And, you know, they're just a hard opponent to play and a much more recognizable team. And the interesting thing, too, is that in those 20 games where they were kind of a dumpster fire and they really didn't look good, they still were really never out of a playoff spot. I don't know what that says about the Eastern Conference. I don't know what that says about the Atlantic Division. Certainly it says something about them, too. Even when they were horrendous, they were still basically in a wild card spot in the Eastern Conference the entire time. And now they've cracked that top 3 in the Atlantic Division, and they're within shouting distance of first place, actually, at this point, after going on the run they've had. But they did a good job of never getting that far out of it, even though they weren't playing good hockey at all the first 20 games of the year.
It is amazing when you look at the Atlantic, and obviously the Florida Panthers have had a great start. The Leafs have been right there with them at the top of the division, but the Habs won last night. They get to 25th. They're last in the division, and yet they're only 4 points out of a playoff spot and that final wild card right now. I mean, there really has been no one that's sort of separated themselves, minus a half decent gap for those 3 teams. And then a whole bunch of other teams that I think a lot of people are just waiting to kind of get a move on. And it seemed like the Bruins did that with that coaching change. How much of this was on Jim Montgomery, or had the players tuned him out? I mean, it didn't take him long to get another job, that's for sure.
No, and Jim Montgomery's a good coach. Like you know how it is in the NHL. Like every coach is hired to get fired. Like that's kind of their lot in life. The NHL, the head coaches. There's certain expiration dates for some coaches which come by quicker than others. I do think definitely. It's obvious when you look at the way that they're playing now versus the way they played the first 20 games of the year. Much better back checking, better hustle, better emotional engagement. Like everything is better. Even Nikita Zadarov was saying last week and kind of admitted that they were disconnected as a team when Jim Montgomery was there. And how much of that was on him personally, I can't say. Like I don't think the players necessarily tuned him out, but they certainly weren't playing as hard as they possibly can. And a lot of those guys were really looking far worse than they ever have in their NHL careers. And it was almost across the board for the first 10 or 15 games. So I think it was a few different things. Maybe there was some uncertainty too with his contract, like that I think factored into it too. Montgomery went into this year on the last year of his deal. The Bruins and Montgomery couldn't come to an agreement on an extension over the summer. Maybe he knew he had St. Louis in his back pocket. He was an assistant coach there before he came to the Bruins. Certainly still knows a lot of people in that organization. And from what I was told, he had spurned several offers from the Bruins for an extension over the summer. Montgomery had. So there was a lot of uncertainty as to where he was going to be after this year and what was going to happen to him even before he got fired. And maybe some of that uncertainty, just like, the Bruins, was destabilizing for them across the board because they didn't kind of know what the future held. There's a lot of players on this Bruins team, it's interesting, that are either going to be RFA or UFA after the season is over. So I think there's a lot of guys on this team that are kind of concerned about, what's going to happen to them after this year. And I think that can be, difficult for a lot of players to focus on what's going on the ice when all of that is happening. Add all that with, I think there was definitely some people that probably weren't happy about the Jeremy Swayman negotiations and how he missed all the training camp, and that played into them struggling at the beginning of the year. And I think there was, some repairs that Swayman had to make in that room after it was all said and done, just based on the way things played out, both the Bruins side and Swayman side, and how acrimonious it got. So I think there was a lot of noise just around this Bruins team and a lot of factors that played into it those first 20 games. And, honestly, Montgomery doesn't get all of the blame. The players get most of the blame. It's one of those classic, you can't fire all the players. It's easier to fire the coach. But I will also say, I'm sure constant shuffling of forward lines that Montgomery has done probably started to annoy the players a little bit. They want to play with certain guys, and Montgomery would constantly shuffle them around. I think his system is very predicated on skill, on holding on to the puck, on making plays. And this Bruins roster is not really that kind of makeup where his system offensively, I think, was a great fit for this Bruins team. I think Joe Sacco's philosophy, which is what the Bruins have done most of the time in the past, funneling a lot of pucks to the net, shot volume, quantity over quality when it comes to shot, firing from everywhere in the offensive zone, getting rebounds, creating chaos by either getting rebounds or, long point shots that go off the end boards and creating that chaos in the defensive zone and kind of getting some ugly goals. That's more along the lines of what the Bruins do. I think Montgomery was trying to treat them like they were this, fancy skill finesse team, and the Bruins are not that and have never been that. And I think maybe Sacco's philosophy this year is meshing a little bit better with what the talent that they have on the roster.
Well, speaking of Sacco, Joe, how interim is he? Are they waiting to see what happens maybe with the Mike Sullivan or some other guys, or is the job that he's doing right now making him likely to be the next head coach of the Bruins officially?
Well, look, I mean, if he wins 7 out of every 9 games for the rest of the year, I think he's going to get the job. You know what I mean? If they continue to play the way that they're playing now, if he really manages the personalities well, if they like playing for him, if he kind of holds the line and holds guys accountable when he has to, if all that stuff is happening and they keep winning, I do think he's got a good shot to take the interim tag off. I mean, I think any coach that comes in and is highly successful, even if they're not looked at when they take over as interim as the answer, quote unquote, if they get results and they do a really good job, I think you'd end up sticking with that guy. And I think Sacco is a really interesting case too, right? Because he's kind of in that Mike Sullivan, Bruce Cassidy vein, where he was a head coach in the NHL at 39, 40 years old with the Colorado Avalanche, very young when he got that job, that head job in Colorado, did a pretty good job with the Avalanche, was there for 3 or 4 years, ended up, getting fired, and then spent the next decade plus as an assistant, paying his dues, learning his craft, gaining experience, gaining life experience as well as hockey experience, and also working on the staff with some great head coaches in Boston, whether it was Claude Julien, whether it was Bruce Cassidy, and whether it was Jim Montgomery, and kind of learning things from all of those different head coaches that he worked with while he was an assistant, a longtime assistant. And I think that's kind of what Mike Sullivan did after he, got fired by the Bruins. That was what Bruce Cassidy did after he got fired by the Washington Capitals. They spent a decade plus either in the AHL or as an assistant coach to the NHL, kind of learning their craft, getting more experience, and being ready for that next time if it ever came. And I think Joe Sacco is showing that a decade plus of biding his time and waiting and really, knowing in his mind what he was going to do if he was ever a head coach again. I think it's paying off now. I think he was totally ready for this opportunity when it came. I think the Bruins told him, or at least put him on notice that, once Montgomery didn't sign an extension this summer, that if they did ever have to make a move with the coach, that he was going to be the head guy. That's probably part of the reason he got named associate head coach over the summertime. So that, this was all set in place if this came to fruition. So I think he has everything pointing towards him getting the job if he continues to perform. That being said, I think Mike Sullivan's an interesting name. If things don't work out in Pittsburgh and he ends up moving on there, I think that's something the Bruins would definitely take a look at if he was available. I think Joe Quenneville's a name that would be mighty interesting to the Boston Bruins as well, as he's looking for his next head coaching gig. And I think, a successful coach like that would be a good fit in Boston too. That's been in a big market, that's been with an original six franchise, all that stuff would be interesting. So I think there's a few things that could happen, but I would paint this scenario. If the Bruins get into the playoffs under Joe Sacco and they're a first round exit and it's kind of okay, they may look for a bigger name. They may look for a star coach. Some of these other guys may get consideration. Also guys like Nate Lehman, Providence College hockey coach, like there's some college hockey coaches that I think the Bruins really like too. I think all these guys would be in the mix potentially. If Joe Sacco gets great results, they get into the playoffs, they win a couple rounds, and they really seem to mesh well with him, I see no reason why they would not stick with him and take the interim tag off and just hire him as the head coach. But a lot of it is going to be predicated on what we see the rest of the season for sure.
Hags, you mentioned Jeremy Swayman and coming back to the team. I mean, the trade of Ullmark had to happen. I mean, with what these guys were going to get paid, there was no way they could have them both on the roster. But how and why did it get as public and ugly as it did? And where is Swayman at right now, coming into potentially a head-to-head matchup against one of his cohorts in the Team USA goaltending depth chart for the Four Nations?
Yeah, I mean, his game's getting into a good place now. I think since things stabilized defensively under Sacco, he's been a lot better. He really struggled the first month and a half of the season. Korpisalo was outplaying him the first, I would say, 5 to 6 weeks of the season. But I think Swayman has looked better now as they've played better hockey in zone in front of him, blocking more shots, more commitment to defense. The whole defenseman core is playing much better. Charlie McAvoy was really, really not good the first month plus of the season. Looked like a rover at times where he was just taking off and not even paying attention enough to his responsibilities in the D zone. And that's changed, and he's looked much more like the number one D-man that he can be and is most of the time. And when you start to see that commitment to defense and two-way hockey and defensive zone first, it's obviously going to help a goalie, even a goalie that's elite like Swayman. If the D is playing better in front of him, it's going to help him. And I think that's been a big help to him. But I do think, the contract stuff, like, let's face it, and I've been banging the drum on this a lot. Jeremy Swayman is being paid more than he should be right now. He got a contract that he did not truly earn, based on his stature in the NHL, based on his performance, based on his track record. He's getting paid like a guy that has either won the Vezina Trophy or has been a Vezina Trophy finalist before, a guy that's played 60-plus games in the league in a season before. Like, he didn't do any of this stuff, and he got this huge deal. He never played more than 44 games in a year. Never finished. He only got Vezina Trophy votes this past season. I think he finished like 7th. Never been a finalist, never been in serious consideration for the award. He kind of skipped a couple steps as an RFA to get this big contract. And I'm sure holding out the entire training camp to get the deal that he really wanted, and knowing he had the Bruins, really in a tough spot because they had traded Ullmark. I'm sure that, that bothered some Bruins. I'm sure some Bruins were bothered by that Swayman was willing to basically go through all of camp, not get ready for the season, and really affect this team at the start of the year by not being ready to play in order to get what he wanted contract-wise and what he thought he deserved. Because, a 26-year-old goalie like Swayman that's been an NHL goalie for a few seasons, he is not going to be prepared to start the regular season if he skips all the training camp. He is not a veteran goalie that is going to be able to skip all those reps in camp and somehow find a way to get himself ready to start the year, like maybe a guy that's in his 30s would, that knows how to prepare, knows what he needs, and knows exactly what to do to get ready for the season. Swayman is not that guy yet. So it was obvious he was going to struggle to start the year after skipping all the camp. Going and skating with him and a couple of his buddies or a goalie coach at Boston University while the Bruins are actually practicing in training camp is not the same thing. And then you couple that with him now making, $8 million a year and being paid like a guy that's a number one, being paid like a guy that's going to have a huge expectations on his shoulders. And, oh, by the way, this is the first time he's ever been a number one. This is the first time he's ever been in a season where he didn't have a Vezina Trophy caliber goalie next to him as a partner. He had Tuukka Rask first. He had Linus Ullmark after that. Now it's on his shoulders completely. You take the pressure of that and you take all of that that's on his shoulders now to show that he deserves this contract and that he earned it, and you put that with missing training camp. This had all the ingredients for him to struggle to start the year, and that it was going to be a tough slog for him the first few months. And I think a lot of his veteran teammates probably saw this coming, knew this was coming, saw it, just by the way things played out going into this. And I'm sure there was some hard feelings his way when he finally came back that he had to get over. I think things are okay now, and I think they've kind of, mended fences, and I think everybody kind of had a sort of come to Jesus moment, probably right around the time Montgomery got fired, that needed to come together as a team. Because if they didn't come together after the coach was fired, guys were going to start getting jettisoned next. So I think they figured that out, and they've gotten, on the right path. But it was a rocky road for Swayman at the beginning of the season. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Well, of course, we heard those crazy comments from Cam Neely that got everyone talking around the hockey world. It was something we don't see very often. Joe Haggerty's with us. Hags, just before we go, this team is synonymous with David Pasternak and certainly Brad Marchand. Both had slow starts. I know Past is a game-time decision tonight right now, but just a quick thoughts on their season and where those two players are coming into tonight in Winnipeg.
Yeah, they both struggled to start just like everybody else. It's funny. Pasternak was getting goals at the beginning of the year just because he's so talented and he's a gifted playmaker, goal scorer, game breaker, all that stuff. But he was not playing good hockey at all. He was chasing. To me, he looked like a guy that was not in the best of shape in training camp to start the year. He was a guy that looked like, and he mentioned at one point, the first month of the season, that he had some kind of injury that he suffered maybe during the World Championships when he was playing for Czechia, or maybe before that, and he still played with it. but something that bothered him over the summer where he said he wasn't able to, work out like he usually does and have the usual summer conditioning program that he has to get ready for the season. But he looked, frankly, just flat out of shape to start the year. He did not look like he was ready to play NHL hockey. Taking a ton of hooking penalties, taking a lot of stick infractions where he was chasing the play, making a lot of bad decisions with the puck. Just not strong on the puck, not aggressive offensively, certainly not looking to shoot the puck like he usually does. There was a lot going on with him where he didn't look like himself. And he's another one that I'd say in the last month or so has definitely looked like he's in shape now. He's playing his game. He's still passing up more shots than you would expect for a guy with his offensive pedigree, but I think it's starting to come back. And you also can't argue with some of the playmaking because I think defenses gear so much to stopping him in his shot, and they're so worried about the one-timer and the dangerous shot that he has. He's set up in the last last couple of home games, he's set up overtime game winners to Pavel Zacha just based on his playmaking. And based on in overtime, the defense is flocking to him, and it's freeing up space and chances for his teammates. So he's doing the right thing when he's passing some of these shots up. But, he definitely, I think, he struggled to start the year, and I think a lot of it was attributable to not being in great shape. Marchand was coming off 3 surgeries. I think he and everybody else knew he was going to struggle to start the year. He's 36, 37 years old. He's a couple years removed from having a double hip surgery. He's logged a lot of hard miles. I don't think he's quite the explosive player that he used to be offensively anymore. You see it in spurts, but you don't see it as consistently as you did before. I think he's getting by a lot more on smarts, on toughness, on, just some skill that he still has, but he also thinks the game extremely well, and he's still very aggressive and very smart in the way he picks his spots with certain things offensively. And I think all that stuff is translating into offense and goals right now, and he's definitely moving around better and playing better. But I think he's also a guy that, he's just not going to be able to, I think, dominate for as long as stretches now as he used to, just based on his age and where he is in his career. And so I think at times you have to have a little bit less high expectations on him as a player. But I think the off seasons for both of those players played into the struggles to start the year. And that may be an unfair part, too, of why Montgomery got fired. Some of his best players just weren't in great shape to start the year and weren't in the place they needed to be to start the season. And now we're starting to see Joe Sacco enjoy the fruits of Marchand and Pasternak being in midseason form now. But that's the way it goes sometimes. But, if Pasternak does play tonight, and certainly you'll see it out of Marchand, they've had a couple of days off now, you'll see that they're back to pretty close to what they usually are when they're playing.
Hey, Hags, just quickly on the way out, I mean, we know the huge holes that the retirements of Krejci and Bergeron left. They spent some money and got Elias Lindholm. How's he fitting into Boston?
Yeah, he's been okay. He hasn't been great. I think he has not had great chemistry with Pasternak. They were hoping those two were going to be able to play together, and I don't think it has worked out the way they thought it was going to. I think offensively, he still looks hesitant at times. He still looks like he's building chemistry with the best players on the Bruins, and he's not quite there yet, either connecting with them or them connecting with him. He's missed on a lot of chances where guys are trying to set him up. He definitely is not offensively production-wise where they expected him to be when they gave him the kind of money that he did. I think the Bruins kind of thought, they obviously knew they were getting a two-way center, a guy that can defend really well, a guy that can win faceoffs, kill penalties, do a lot of the two-way stuff that Patrice Bergeron did. But I think they thought they were getting something close to Bergeron offensively, and Lindholm has not been that. I don't know if he's still on the same pace, but as of about a week ago, he was on a pace for 9 goals and 38 points this year, based on what he'd done to this point. And certainly they thought they were going to get more than that. He's playing the bumper spot on that first power play unit that Patrice Bergeron always played, and he really has not been a factor there, and has been part of the reason the power play has struggled as much as it has, is he just has not been dangerous in the bumper. He has not been able to make good decisions. He has not been an impact player there, and he just isn't a threat offensively there right now, and it's allowed penalty killers to kind of sag away from him and neutralize some of the other guys in the Bruins power play because they're not worried about Lindholm really hurting them. Now, that being said, he plays hard, plays more physical than I thought he was as a player, plays really hard defensively, hustles, is not going to hurt you on the ice. He definitely is a good center, NHL center as far as all that stuff goes. But I think the jury is still out whether he is the number one center that they paid the money to be a number one center based on what he's doing offensively, because the numbers haven't been there for that.
Hey, Joe, thanks so much for the time. Always fun when the original 6 Bruins come to town. We'll look forward to dropping the puck tonight downtown in Winnipeg, and hopefully we can catch up later on this season. You have a great holiday.
You got it. Sounds good. And I'm just sad I'm not there in person in Winnipeg, so I can't hit my my favorite Moxies at the rink after the game is over. So go have some wings for me after the game.
Good stuff, pal. Thanks so much.
You got it, guys. Take care.
All right, good stuff with Hags. Cannot wait for this game tonight, and hopefully have a much better home performance than the last couple at Canada Life Center. But Jets in action tonight at 40 points. So are the Minnesota Wild. Before we wrap the show, let's get to the Coolbet lines today. And tell you right off the bat, I put together a WST parlay. We're getting a little aggressive tonight. We will take the Jets to win. I'm hoping for a big Connor Hellebuck game tonight. So how about Bruins under 2.5 goals? And the numbers on the top line are really, really chalky for points. But let's go with Nito Niederreiter to get a point and Neil Pionk to get a point. So Niederreiter and Pionk to get on the scoreboard. Bruins under 2.5 goals. Jets to win. Boosted up to 8-1 right now in the exclusive section over at Coolbet. As far as the games go tonight, it's a quick rundown of everything in the NHL. Canes, massive minus 526 favorites at home against the Sharks. The Flyers, minus 119 favorites in Columbus. Devils, favorite at home against the Leafs, minus 135. Avalanche, a minus 175 road favorite in Pitt. The LA Kings, winners of 6 in a row on Long Island to take on the Islanders. Kings, a minus 130 favorite. The Predators might be the worst team in the league. They're still a minus 175 home favorite against Calgary. That one doesn't make sense. I don't want to touch it, though. The game right here in Winnipeg, Jets, minus 133 favorites against the Bruins. Boston, plus 113. The Oilers hosting the Lightning, minus 154 for Edmonton. Minnesota is a very slight road dog. This is basically a pick'em, though, in Utah against the Hockey Club. Minnesota minus 105, Utah minus 111. The Panthers minus 182 favorites against Seattle. And we've got the Blues and Canucks finishing things up at 9 p.m. St. Louis plus 148, Vancouver minus 175. But if you go to the main page, to the combo cards, we got a couple things that I'm in on today. For the community, lock shoppers, Edmonton and Winnipeg, EST, WST. How about wins for the Jets and Oilers? Got a nice boost on that up to plus 218. Both teams favored at home tonight. And then for the lock shop partner parlay, our favorite picks for tonight: Colorado over Pittsburgh, Kings over the Islanders, and Wild over Utah. That's plus 435 if you put it in yourself, but thanks to the generosity of Pat and Jake, we got a boost up to 5-1 at plus 500. Now, I was mentioning that Rod Z and I added a couple games to that one. So if you like Colorado, we are taking Minnesota, and we're taking the Kings. And then I wanted to add Philly to the ticket at minus 119, and Rod Z likes the Panthers. So a 5-gamer, if you want to take Colorado, Minnesota, LA, Philly, and Florida, put a little sprinkle on this one, it's over 14-1, plus 1426. So there are your games for tonight. And one other thing I do want to mention, by the way, speaking of Coolbet, we were having a tough time figuring out when we were going to do the December edition of the Coolbet Lock Shop WST EST Poker Series. We're going to do it next Tuesday. Now, normally we like to do it on non-game days, but this is a little different because it's a road game in San Jose, a 9:30 start. So we're going to start the poker tourney at 9, and it'll be a little poker/hockey night for WSTers. So mark the date down a week from today. We'll let you know we should have registration open in the next couple of days. If you played with us before, hopefully you can join us. I'm actually pretty fired up, Remo, that we'll be able to play and watch the game at the same time. And maybe that will make for some more sensible, conservative play in the tournament while paying attention to the hockey game.
Yeah, well, certainly if you have issues staying awake for these late games, having a poker on while watching hockey would help. And yeah, you just get a little screen. You can stay focused on the hockey game, but also, do a little clicking, little betting, little folding.
Some all-inning,
little big blind, little blind, all the poker terms, you can do them all, but while also watching the Jets and Sharks, right? And if it goes according to plan, the Jets will have locked up that game after one period, right? I mean, what's that number tonight? What's Carolina?
Minus 526.
Minus 526? Isn't that absurd?
Well, it is, but then you think about what they're left with at the goaltending position after trading Mackenzie Blackwood. Although I guess Askarov, he's up, right? I mean, he'll be there, and he's now starting now that they got rid of him, or was it just a swap for Georgiev for Blackwood?
Let's confirm. Vitek Vanacek is starting tonight, so we'll see when it's Askarov time.
Vanacek. All right, I'm in on Askarov. Exciting young goaltender. Didn't go great. He's one of these guys. They've like Connor Hellebuck, spent some time in the minors, and now seemingly is ready to go. It's all over at Coolbet. The exclusives, the combo cards right at the top of the main page. If you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And again, for the poker, click on poker. It'll take you over to the poker app. Get that downloaded and get ready to join us a week today, December 17th. A little poker at 9, Jets and San Jose Sharks at 9:30. Should be a really fun night. Listen, it's a game day, so we got to get this pod up so people can listen on the way to the game. I see it is snowing quite heavily outside. If you're making your way downtown tonight, be careful on the roads. Give yourself a little bit of extra time. And fingers crossed, we're talking about a big win on this program tomorrow. Should be a good one, though. Boston with their lone visit of the season to Canada Life Center. If I see you there at the game, make sure to say hi. And if not, come back and join us tomorrow live at 1 p.m. on YouTube for the live broadcast of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And, of course, in your podcast feed later on tomorrow afternoon. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. Thanks to Mike McIntyre, Chris Meaney, and Joe Haggerty for jumping on the show today. Join us tomorrow for a full breakdown of Jets Bruins and a look ahead to the Vegas Golden Knights visit on Thursday on tomorrow's edition of WST. Enjoy, everyone.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.